I think there is definitely a natural process. I think it helps if you've got guidance in that process and there's shared conversation. Um, Time heals all wounds. I struggle with that line, that platitude, because a lot of people grieving are told that, you're going to be fine. You'll move on. You'll find closure. Time heals all wounds. The platitudes, they're said in the most well-intentioned way, but they're very minimalistic. They minimize the grief and they dismiss the person. They make the person stop talking. Like if you say to me, tell me about your grief, and I say, time heals all wounds. Are you going to continue that conversation? You're not. So I guess, does time heal? Time helps you integrate. Time helps you get used to living with grief. But grief is a lifelong experience. And we now know there's a concept called continued bonds. And we now know that healthy grieving is about having that continued relationship with the person or what you lost. And, it's not about closure and forgetting and fixing and moving on. It's about coming to a place of integrating and learning to be with and having a continued relationship with the person that's gone. So that might be having rituals, that might be doing something on their anniversary, that might be coming and talking to them with me. Maybe they've nowhere else to go with the stories and the memories and that shared experience. So yeah, it's not linear. You asked me about clients, like, and time. Clients can come to me for an intense period of work and then go away, and then they'll come back, and they'll go away and come back, because something might happen in their lives. Some change has occurred, another loss has occurred, maybe in a non-death way or in a change way, and then they feel the feelings and think, I need to get some support with this. So yeah, it's an open door. And it's never too late. Like, delayed grief, well, if you feel at a time in your life, I'm ready to look at this, or this is really impacting my relationships and I'm noticing that, or this isn't serving me well, then it's never too late to look at the grief. It's never too late to unpack it or process it. I worked in adoption for many years, and I worked with birth parents and adoptees, and I would work with women in their 80s coming, birth parents who placed their child for adoption, coming to talk about their grief in their 80s because there wasn't the support when they were pregnant and younger. So, and what that brought to them in their lives to be able to tell someone. And sometimes I was the only person, or the other counsellors on the team were the only people they'd ever shared that with. That's powerful. I mean, that's amazing. And for people to do that, and that's why it's never too late. And you say people go towards it. Some people go away from it, from their culture and their religion, because they're angry. If I'm a good person, I believe in God, I pray, I'm a good person, and this happened to me. How can this happen to me? How can there be a God? So, I think we need to be very respectful, non-judgmental, and supportive of what people are doing in their grief. So if they're leaning into religion or moving away from it, if that religion provides a framework of a funeral and ceremony and rituals, if that's right for that family and that person, that's what should be supported. And that can change. Somebody can move away from their religion and then come back to it. They can go into it and move back from it. And we have also what's called post-traumatic growth, which is hope and recovery from trauma. And people often change, well, their lives are totally changed by the trauma and grief in some instances. So they change their lives. They may gravitate towards a different religion or a different type of spirituality or a different way of being, because they're thinking, well, that life I was living, I'm not sure I relate to that anymore. I've been through too much. I've lost too much. I want to live a different life. Their religion might be going to the beach every day. It might be, reading more. It might be making sure they have more holidays. So yeah, it turns up very differently for each person. I think, how can you prepare yourself for that? And then if you did, are you really living a full life if you're constantly worried? And I mean, grief anxiety is a thing. I lived it myself. If my brother died, how can he die? So if he can die, who else can die? So absolutely, but that has to be managed. That has to be processed, because that can take over. That anxiety can take over. Can you prepare yourself for loss? No. But can you tell people you love them? Can you tell people you appreciate them? Can you live a good life? Yes. But grief, guilt, regret, sadness, it's all part of grief. Even if you spoke to the person and told them you love them, 5 minutes before they died, you're still going to regret and have loss and grief, because it's a normal response to want more, to have been better, to have been more connected. We're human. So we're always trying to achieve a greater level of connection. And I don't think you can prepare yourself for that loss. I think you can help yourself in it, but not prepare yourself for it, because we don't know how we're going to be. Well, if I can go back to the last question about better, I guess I would not lean into better, because I think we're categorizing then. We're saying you're grieving good, better, bad. We're labeling it, and then there could be shame around that if I'm not doing grief well enough. So I think I'm very mindful not to lean into labeling it, or success in grief. That's a really personal experience, and people are doing their best in grief. They're coping the best way they can, and they need to be supported in that. I think psychosocial education is key, that I mentioned earlier, helping people understand maybe why they're responding the way they are, but having those conversations more openly, having more awareness, and resourcing people that it is okay to ask for help in their support systems. It's okay to say to someone, I know you're really uncomfortable when I bring up this subject, or when I bring up my person, but I'd really like you to stop and listen. Would you be able to sit with me while I tell you this story? So resourcing people to go back out. It's not their job, the bereaved's job, to educate everyone, but there is a component around that about having your needs met, and being heard and validated, and to start those conversations, to be aware. So, for instance, maybe the next time someone shares something with you, because we've had this conversation today, there might be a nugget there where you go, you know what, I'm going to pause with this today. I'm going to listen to this person. I'm going to ask this person, what was your dad's name? What do you miss about him? How are you doing? How are you going? Must be really tough. Just even a couple of questions. If you don't know what to say, even saying, I'm not sure what to say, but I'd love to go for a coffee with you. What I call magical thinking, where you might say, if you had a magic wand, what would you prefer it to be? Or if we had a silver bullet, what would we change? Like, what is so hard about this? So that can be helpful to get a sense of what the person wants their life to be, and not where they are. And getting a sense of who the person was before their grief, because that can get lost. When they turn up in my space, they can often be so traumatized and grief stricken, you don't know who the person was beforehand. And that's really interesting, to know who that person was. And then learning to, how grief is impacting, and trauma. Is it impacting their nervous system, their body, their work, their thinking, and their relationships? So gathering information about all of that is really important and key, and normalizing some of that, because our brains don't function as well. It's grief fog is a thing. It comes back online, but people get very frustrated at work, don't feel like they're performing well. So actually being told that's a normal response, what can we do to help you with that? So something as simple as making lists every day, putting reminders on your phone, I see my job as reminding people of their appointments or booking ahead and having some structure so people have a framework. So just little things like that can really be helpful. Talking about the psychosocial side of grief, looking at the theories can really be helpful with people, explaining what to expect in grief, normalizing and saying, yeah, does it sound like this? Right. That would make sense. You would feel that way. Why wouldn't you feel that way? So it's really a collaborative approach, and seeing how people are taking care of themselves or not, seeing how they're responding. Are they eating in a way that maybe is not helpful? Are they drinking alcohol or using drugs in a way that's not helpful? Are they numbing their grief? Are they over functioning because they're grieving? Are they not wanting to feel it all and going to do things that aren't helpful? So just really working in that intense period around that. And I'm really about finding their own strengths and their own resilience and working from a strengths based perspective. So, and really congratulating people because they're amazing. I mean, their whole world may have been turned upside down and they're still able to get up in the morning. They're still able to have a shower. They're still able to attend to their kids. They're still able to go to work and if they're not, that's okay too. But people amaze me what they can do, but they might be really hard on themselves. They might feel like they're failing, that they're not coping. So my role is about resourcing. It's about making them feel that, that this is an acceptable response. This is a normal response. We're supposed to do this when we lose something that matters to us or a person that matters to us. We mourn, we grieve. The difficult part and yes, I do see a pattern, but I also see relief. Okay, I went to see a counsellor and it wasn't as bad as I thought. A lot of people are afraid, like, what's she going to do? So it's lovely when people go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought, or I was really worried about coming here today. I was so nervous and it was grand, So, and thank you for helping me. And would you like to come back? I would. So that in itself is a shift, right? But then I guess when people really go into the hard work of grief and feeling it, sometimes they don't want to come to the appointment. The hard part is actually turning up for the appointment, even if they're engaged in support for quite some time. If they're doing well at work or they're doing well in their world and they kind of don't want to feel it, coming to me is calling it up, is feeling it. And they might, which is hard, but sometimes they'll have that big cry, maybe that they've been holding on to for a couple of months or a couple of weeks. Or they might say, I didn't know what I was going to talk to you about today. I thought I was grand. I thought I was doing great. And they're emotional. And I say to them, it's not that you're not doing well. You just needed to release this. You held this in because you're functioning in the world and maybe there was nowhere to go with this and you pushed it down and then you released it so you can go back out into the world more resourced, lighter, and able to keep going. Absolutely. And I think there is stigma still about, if I go to a counsellor, what does that mean? But actually, it's a great gift to yourself to go and give yourself time and space to work through and make your life a good life, as you asked at the beginning. I'm not an expert in mindfulness, but what I do in practice would be very much about the breath, asking people because they can lose their breath in the distress. If you've been through a trauma, to process that with somebody else can be triggering, and helping that person know they're in a safe space and the trauma is not happening again, but they're having a memory of it in a safe space. And I do this naturally, but I get people to put their hand on their heart or a hand on their chest, hand on their tummy, and really we breathe together. And that co-regulation of a counsellor and client can be really helpful when people are comfortable. Some people are like, what are we doing here? But, just helping them, saying, look, this can be helpful. Other people find this helpful. Would you be okay if we did this together? And just getting them, and I've got my hand on my tummy here, and just to breathe, put your feet on the floor, to bring the nervous system right down, because grief and trauma just send it offline. Like, it's just horrendous, the physiological, emotional, nervous system response. And then the impact on the brain and the thinking and the being and the behaviors. So just even a simple, and that co-regulation, helping someone regulate in your holding that space, in providing a framework, providing that calm, can really help the person just feel safe and heard, and also have a tool to go out into the world. And if they're on a bus, they might just pause. If they're in a waiting room somewhere and they're feeling nervous, just to be able to do it. And they mightn't feel comfortable doing this, but they might just put their hands on their knees and just breathe. And that can suit many people to journal and write. Other people, their brain fog or their grief is too much to do another thing is too much. So really meeting the person and what they need to do. That's a beautiful thing, you know, if you can do that. And I suppose it's about a continued relationship, but a new relationship. So the grief is around the person isn't here anymore. Physically, I can't speak to them, I can't see them, but having a new relationship with that person where some people might talk to their person, some people might buy flowers every week, some people might listen to a song every day or every couple of months that really brings connection and brings the grief up. Some people write every year on their birthday or anniversaries. There's a beautiful resting place in Sydney. It's a garden for children who've died, and they've got a post box, and you can put a letter in there for your child. So that's such a beautiful thing for parents to be able to do. And some people do that perhaps every week, and some people do it once a year, and some people do it whenever they feel like it. So some people write books, some people set up a charity and raise money for their loved one. So whatever it is, it has to be right for that person, and also right for who they are and their identity and their relationship. I guess I see it as respect for whatever the person needs to do, they need to do. And whatever feels right for them, feels right for them. And I think what can be an aspect of risk is if it's affecting their life, if they can't, if it's impacting their living, then you'd address that. But if it's actually supporting them in their relationship with their person who has died, then to respect and support that. And that can turn up differently for everyone. It has their own individual way of honouring their person. And sometimes through counselling, people get permission to do that because they might have superstitions, or they might have no idea of what is okay and what isn't okay. And it's not my place to say that's not right or isn't, or society's. What's really important is to see what matters to the person, what's of value to the person, what helps them connect with their person that's died, and what would be helpful for them to manage their grief.